With Cushman & Wakefield. We're here at the CoreNet Global Summit in Atlanta, and I'm going to spend a few minutes with Jim Young, who is the CEO of Realcomm, and we've just had a great informational session, and I've got a few additional questions for you today. So let's start off. There's a lot that's changing in technology. Can you talk about the intersection of technology and real estate in the corporate world, and what are some of the pain points that a real estate director might experience?
Well, I think you have to start that dialogue with saying that the intersection is pretty complex.
Yeah.
Okay, and in all fairness to people who've spent their entire careers managing real estate and they've developed skills in that particular business, sometimes it can be overwhelming and daunting. I mean, even the consumers are starting to hear things like cloud computing and put things in the cloud and integration, interoperability, and all these acronyms that us technology people are very comfortable with. But you know, if you throw them at any layman, there's a lot of confusion. On top of the business technology just going through the roof in just the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, things we've been waiting for a long time are finally here, and really are going to enable us to do all the things we wanted to do, but they're pretty complex. But on top of that, you've got devices like the iPad coming from the consumer side. So the corporate real estate executive is at home, and the kids are taking these to school, and they're using them at the home, and all of a sudden they're saying, I wonder if I should be signing leases on these. And so they're really getting hit from every angle. So the intersection's busy, and you better watch the crosswalks. But once you get to the other side of the street, it's a lot of fun, especially when you see how big the changes can be and the positive impacts they can have, and the control it gives you in your environment to manage the real estate portfolio a little differently. It's a whole new way of looking at things.
So what technologies would you say are radically impacting corporate real estate today?
Well, I mentioned the cloud a little bit, and the cloud is simply, instead of having to download applications on complicated servers and everything and all that expense, I go up to, like, Google is on the cloud and Facebook is on the cloud, and you know, if I have a Google document that I store up on the cloud, it's free, so I don't have to bother people with servers and the expense of all that. And then mobility. Okay, so basically you put all the information in the sky, and now you've given me the ability to go anywhere. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that I better have buildings that have wireless, or I certainly better not have buildings that don't get cell phone coverage. And so a lot of corporate campuses, you know, 5 years ago that wasn't much of an issue, but now you've got a mobile young workforce who's living on their iPhones. They come into work and they don't have any bars. That's a problem. Okay. Yeah. Plus, that generation's coming to work being able to hit everything. I mean, they did a little survey, or it was where they put an 18-year-old child into a room with flat screens, and he instantly started trying to point things, just like he does on the iPad. Okay, so you've got a whole new generation of people coming up with different expectations of how the world works. So when you hand them a paper lease, or you give them a maintenance order request, or you give them a paper report on, you know, all the assets, they're like, what's this? Okay, so I think you're really seeing a lot of things. The technology is expanding. New generations coming up are really going to be forcing all these issues.
So I hear that, and I know people are bringing a lot of technology into the workplace, but I picture the IT director just having a real hard time understanding the security and the risk to the enterprise. How do we manage that?
I always use that analogy because there are people who will literally not make decisions because they feel that the security issues, especially like on the intelligent building side. Oh, I'm going to hook my building up to a network so somebody halfway around the world can turn my lights off or my air conditioning off midday, you know, Wednesday, right? And they are legitimate concerns, and security should always be at the foremost of the way you operate. But I would say that I'll just defer to the fact that over time we've usually figured it out. When there's a major security breach, like we've had a lot of them in the last 6 months to a year with companies like Google and others, their security systems, and those are big companies with big barriers. They shouldn't be breached, right? But they have been. So my number one point is take it serious. There are companies out there devoted to that. And if you're a lower profile company that maybe you don't have top secret information, maybe you don't have to spend as much time and energy going overboard. But if you're a very high profile Fortune 100, Fortune 500, you know what you got to do in that arena. Right behind it, I would say, do not inhibit or slow down your strategic planning based on security concerns. Find out what you want to do, find out the information systems you want to deliver, or the business process or the experience you want to deliver. Move forward. It's going to take you time to figure that out. And at the parallel time, go to your IT team and saying, we want to make this happen. We're just assuming you guys are going to be able to handle the security aspect of this. and they've got all sorts of technologies and devices and solutions that they'll put walls up front, behind, and inside that will protect you from people who aren't supposed to be there.
So speaking of IT, if I'm a director of real estate, and we've heard a lot at CoreNet about partnering with our colleagues in IT and HR and finance, how do I start that process? How do I begin that conversation with them? I mean, there's always political issues. What should I say?
Well, you know, it's funny. I often wonder, how do trends start?
Yeah.
You know, how does something become popular enough to present at a conference like this? You know, why does something make a general session stage and something makes a breakout 5 blocks down the street, right? And I don't know the answer to that, other than a lot of people must be thinking about it, okay? And that question you just asked me has come up more in the last 60 days than it has in the last 10 years, okay? I know we've been talking about it for a while, you know, HR, IT, FM, real estate, but I think we've jumped the chasm, so to speak, where it's no longer a if, it's a when. And I think, and it's not just in our world, it's in all world, because technology is changing the rules for everything we do. And all that means is that if you worked in a particular silo, and I don't mean silo in a negative way, but I was in charge of real estate, I was in charge of human resources, you had your filing cabinets and they had theirs. Now the filing cabinets are all electronic, and I need a little bit of your information, and need a little bit of my information, and why should we plug that information in 2, 3, 4 times? All of a sudden, you got some new best friends, okay? And then organizationally, what it takes is somebody, either, you know, somebody from one of those departments to go, as we joked about in the session, you know, have lunch, you know, and invite human resources, IT, real estate, HR, FM, sustainability. I mean, those are the groups that need to be in the room. And whether it's upper management pushing down and saying meet, or all the teams saying, I think we should have lunch. I don't care where it starts. Somebody's got to get that first meeting. You know, and basically the discussion should be, I'm real estate, I'm HR. How's technology changing your world? Wow, I thought that was my problem. No, it's now my problem, and it will be amazing. You do four lunches, 1 month, a couple hours at a time. Within 1 month, you will realize beyond a shadow of a doubt that this organizational communications, collaboration, and realignment has to happen. And the real interesting thing is, it gets fun real quick, because all of a sudden you realize you're not the only one. Other people got similar problems. Always easier to solve problems with teams than try to do it your own. And all of a sudden it gets really fun again. And the problems get solved much faster.
A lot of generations are in the workplace today, needs with different technology needs. A lot of people are working away from the workplace. Trex Morris of Ernst & Young told me work's no longer a noun, it's a verb. What kind of technologies do you see that people are using when people are working remotely? And also talk about home-based. What should a corporate real estate director think about in terms of placing people in their home?
Well, I've had a home office for 18 years.
Okay.
I got kicked out of my office in Los Angeles, Culver City. It's probably closer to 20 years ago. And I thought they were absolutely out of their mind crazy to send me into home office. And I fought it, and I don't think I've looked back 19 years. Okay. Now I've had companies where I've had to go into offices. I've worked in corporate, 500 environments, and I understand that too. But I think every home, regardless of, whether your work requires or not, needs a home office. Okay, my home office doubles as a place where the kids study at night. So in the morning, it's my office. In the afternoon, it's a study room. And in the evening, it's a media center where we watch movies on big screens. So it's a very functional room, okay? But that's also where my wife pays the bills, and I'm doing some work at night, and we're chatting. It's the place where communications take. I guess call a new room. It's a communications room. Okay, so, and it has an outside entrance, so if we have people over, people don't have to come through the living room to get to the office or the meeting or whatever. So if you start with the assumption that anybody who's, in a competitive 21st century environment has that room in their house, then the corporate real estate director's got a little bit easier job. But if the people aren't at that point and they got like this bedroom that hasn't been used, and I will tell you, you don't want to go there. Okay, you have to understand the environment. It's got to have all the issues of privacy and access and communications and technology. Not that complicated. Most people have DSL lines or cables, so you got the broadband. Give them a laptop. Our company actually started buying laptops when a new employee starts. We split the cost of the laptop, and you own it. It's not my equipment anymore. I assume you're going to put your personal stuff on it. You're going to want to keep it after if you ever leave.
Idea.
And we just give it to them, and we're done. And then all of our systems are up on clouds. We've got our base server, I think, is in Los Angeles, and our backup is in Phoenix. So one system. So you could never shut my office down, then ever. You know?
And when an employee leaves, all that data is still sitting in the cloud.
Oh, it's in the cloud, yeah. And if my laptop goes down and I need a presentation, like my partner's sitting right there, he can log out of the cloud with his laptop and grab it down for me, give me on a stick. So after 9/11, we did an assessment, and other than the mourning and the consequences of the disaster, just dealing with it, we were up and running immediately. I mean, there was no downtime, and we took everybody, sent them home. Actually, I think we sent them home for a week. Mm-hmm. Everybody had broadband, everybody had laptops, everything was on the cloud, and we were ready to go. Mm. So.
Let's talk about smart buildings for a second. You have spent a lot of time studying that. What are the latest trends in smart buildings, and what kind of questions should a corporate real estate director ask? What kind of data do we need?
Yeah, the smart building phenomenon has been around, I'm guessing, 30 years. Okay, and it started with just basic building automation stuff. Johnson, Honeywell, Siemens, kind of building systems, HVAC, a little bit of lighting, and it's all started to change about 10 years ago. And actually, it started changing more overseas than it did here. We went on a trip to Asia, 7 cities. It was Tokyo, Seoul, Beijing, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, and Singapore. We looked at about 32 projects over 2 weeks, and it basically changed our lives. I mean, we said, wow, this is not the way buildings I've seen. And there was one event in Tokyo at the Matsushita corporate headquarters where one of their executives took a table lamp, much like you'd have next to your bed, and he took an RJ45, which is a computer cable, and he plugged it into it. And it lit, it powered the light. A little screen came up and said, light on the network, manufacturer, date of time, energy consumption, brightness, and so you could really control this light from the network. And there were some guys from Cisco there with me, and there was also some real estate guys, and we just sat there and we go, this is big.
Wow.
So at that point we came home and said every device in the building has to be on a network, and not a proprietary network, an open architected, interoperable, sort of like how we used to go from mini computers and there were those companies who did one thing one way, and all of a sudden we said, no, you can have printers from one company and laptops from another, and it all works together. That's where building automation has come. So you have this open, so I can hook up lights, HVAC, security cameras, irrigation systems, drinking fountains, fire extinguishers, parking gates, soda machines. The corporate real estate director, executive, in combination with other departments in the future, will have to deal with the fact that their mechanicals, their electricals, are all going over the network. Okay, so that rocket ship has already taken off in the commercial sector. We've gone through about 8 years of evangelizing and hypothesizing. And at our conference this year at Realcomm, I had 1 billion square feet on the panel representing the biggest malls, the federal government, big REITs. And they all said, they looked in the audience and said, not a function of if, it's when. You should all go. They were talking to CIOs saying, you all better go back and figure out how to connect your buildings to the network, because this is not going away.
You told in the story in the session a few minutes ago about the fire extinguisher and that example. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, and I pick on that one for a very distinct reason. It's not by accident. It's something everybody can relate to. And I say lights, HVAC. If you're not, if you've never been in a control room or in the ceilings, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, right? But everybody knows what a fire extinguisher is, right? And we say, okay, we all want to be sustainable and conserve energy, and yet in 2011, with all the technology we've got around us, 98% of all real estate, both whether they're corporate, commercial, institutional, government, you name it, once a month in most states, somebody walks around that facility, could be millions of square feet, with a hole punch. And they walk up to a fire extinguisher and they say, okay, it's still there, it's still on the cradle, and it's got pressure. Punch January, punch February, punch March. And then they then they write a little report that goes back into a file that gets buried, never to be seen again. Okay, so we've got some really bright companies that saw that, and I've been talking about fire extinguishers for a long time. Microsoft, ESI, a little company out of Milwaukee, who finally figured out how to do it. Okay, and so basically you hang the fire extinguisher, put it on a little cradle. You don't even know it's different. And I think the ones right now are plugged into the network, but now they're working on the wireless one, so you don't have to string the wire to it. It's got a little camera on it. And basically, if you put a crate in front of the fire extinguisher and it's obstructed, boom, an alarm. If the pressure goes down, boom, an alarm. If somebody lifts it off the cradle, boom, an alarm. So there's no more somebody walking around. It's called exception-based reporting. You only hear about that fire extinguisher when it's got a problem. And P.S., the email goes to head of maintenance, head of facilities, head of real estate, the fire department. Right. And now this is not law, but we've heard speculation fire departments, I think, suggesting that this could actually give you ammunition to go to your insurance company.
Right.
And you are better equipped now because you are maintaining your fire prevention systems with much more accuracy than old.
Okay.
So people say, how do I pay for this? Which, P.S., the return on investment, I believe the most recent one I've heard is 18 months. Who wouldn't want to put in some technology that has a return on investment of 18 months?
That's one example. That's great.
Yeah, and it's simple, and I think it gets the point across.
So a couple more things. We talked a little bit earlier about data overload. So maybe start and talk about how you handle your voicemail, but then how do you manage, in any corporate role, all of this data that's coming in? How do we prioritize?
I would, if you would have talked to me when I was a kid, I would never have thought of myself as an intellectual. Okay, but at some point in my life, I got intellectual, and when you ask me a question like that, and I've asked myself that question a long time, what are we going to do about information overload? I'm experiencing it, you're experiencing it, everybody's experiencing it. You start having kids with texting and email, everything just gets proportional. You got friends that are planning parties. I missed a party because it's sent from his girlfriend and not my friend, and I just didn't see it in my 200, 300 emails I get, whatever, a day, and it's ridiculously hard to manage. Okay, so at the first level of that question is, I'm not so sure that we're not going to go through some physical and psychological pain as humans, because I'm not sure the brain at our current level of development is capable of processing all the information. And now the younger kids who grew up with it from birth, some of my younger partners are texting, listening to music, on the keyboard, multitasking. And I'm a pretty good multitasker, but I got to tell you, it's getting overwhelming for even me. So I've just started to say, I need to funnel. I need to focus. I can't have all this disparate. So I stopped using voicemail about 3 years ago, and everybody said, you can't be in business and not have voicemail. And I said, that you're going to communicate to people you don't want to work with them. And my voicemail simply says, I'm elaborating, exaggerating a little bit, but I don't use this technology anymore. It's antiquated, and I can't manage it. Because if you get a voicemail, I'm driving down the car or down the road listening to it, I got to save this. You save it. 3 new ones come in. Then I got to go back to the office, and I got to dig through. I got to find it. And then I got to transcribe it. And most voicemails are too verbose anyways. So my voicemail says, if you want me to really respond quickly, jyoung@realcomm.com. And so now at least I've got all my information coming into one. The social networking, the tweeting, the LinkedIn's, jury in my book's still out. I've been in some of those, and I don't want to disparage any of those companies, but a lot of noise. Just like in your office, you got those people knocking on your door all day, wanting to talk when you want to work. I've looked at some of the real estate technology groups out there, and I'm seeing crazy ads that have nothing to do with real estate, have nothing to do with technology. I have self-promotion going on. So if it takes me 3 hours to dig through all the noise to get to the one nugget, I actually think people are going to go back the other way and are going to hire people to filter and only bring relevant information. Because in the current pace, you and I are sitting at a terminal 10 hours a day, and the minute we leave that desk and go mobile, it continues. And I'm just not quite sure that it won't overwhelm us, all right? So what I say is, limit the choices of which you engage, those environments that you want to participate, because you can't go on Twitter and not say anything, otherwise you die, right? And so choose your battles wisely and learn to say no. And the other thing, copying me. People in my organization copy me to let me know. No, you've been delegated the job, and internally, no more emails on keeping me up on projects. We are on conference calls or meetings once a week. We have a 30-minute strategy meeting. Boom, boom, boom. Here's some things we need to talk about. I don't want to be copied in on all this stuff because I don't have time to review your projects. I'm relying on you to take care of them. But it's a skill that we are all going to have to continue to develop.
Okay, one last question. I heard in the panel earlier, you had a panel of corporate real estate executives talking about technology, and one of them made a good point. They said, I expect my service provider to be a leader. I expect my service provider to help me here. So what advice do you have for service providers about how to get smart in technology and about how to really enable and help corporate real estate directors with their job, their difficult job?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of how important that was. And we had a meeting, as I think I mentioned, about a month ago, and we had some corporate real estate directors in the room, some service providers and some technology providers. And one of the real estate execs looked square over the table and said, I'm relying on you to help me because I can't do this by myself. And the service provider loves it. It's like, hey, they want to hire me. This is business, right? But it, again, is a daunting task. I mean, for a service provider to understand the nuances of 30 different clients, 50 different companies, 500 different clients, is going to require some real skill. okay, scalability, bigger resources. And then what the real estate world's going to have to understand is they're asking the service providers to provide some pretty complex tasks. It's probably going to cost a little bit more money than they're used to. I mean, some of the old services that we relied on them, a lot of those have been automated and, or made more simple or not even useful anymore. But as these new tasks of integrating information management systems and connecting buildings, the skill sets are going to require some pretty smart people. But most importantly, it's not either or, it's a team. The service provider can't look at the client and say, you do it on your own, or vice versa. Both of them are going to sit down saying, look, it's to both of our benefits to fix this problem. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's what you bring to the table. Please be honest with me regarding your deficiencies. If you're honest, we can plug those gaps early, but if you tell me you can do everything and then you can't deliver, that's most of the complaints you hear in the corporate real estate world is I did a project and fell flat. They promised me the world and never delivered. Be reasonable with your expectations, identify your deficiencies, and most importantly, really look at each other as partners and not vendor and clients. I think it's...
Well, that's great. A lot of good information. Thank you, Jim Young, CEO of Realcomm.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
from the Atlanta Summit.
Thank you.